My dear friends, today in my office here today, we're doing a little recording of voter education of 2012. It has never been so important for you to be counted, for your voice to be heard, for you to recognize it's your rights to vote. 2012 has been the most important year of so many years of voting, and the reason why today we have one of the leading teacher and also a retired teacher who are going to be having an interview here today regarding or do a little bit of education on voters registration, how important it is for your voices to be heard in today's economy, today's society, today's government. You are the one who choose who your government, who your leaders are, and when you need something done in your city, your county, your state, it is your job to open your voice, put your signature, and make it happen. This morning I'd like to invite Suzanne. Welcome to
Good morning, Harry. Good morning.
Good morning. Now let's today tell us a little bit, as an educator for so many years, why is 2012 the most important year in voter registration today?
Well, every election year is an important election year, but this particular year there's such a difference between some of the political candidates that everyone needs to make sure that their own voice is being heard, and they need to understand the issues so that they can make an informed choice.
Tell us a little bit of some of the things that we should be looking for, or what our needs that need to be done for this election.
All right, well, I think voters need to understand that there's a number of different ways that you can actually cast your ballot. There's absentee ballot, or what is also known as vote by mail. There's a new program called Vote Now. There's early voting, and then of course there's voting on election day, which this year is Tuesday, November the 6th.
I know for many years we used to go to the voting poll. This year we already started the early voting, or what we call absentee ballot. Tell us, what's the difference between these voting?
Absentee ballot, or what is also called vote by mail, is something that you can do at this point of time, even before the polls have opened on election day and even before the period of time that we call early voting. For absentee ballot, you would request a ballot, an absentee ballot, from the supervisor of elections office from whatever county you live in. They would mail it to you, and then you would fill it out, and usually you have a number of choices of how to return it. You can mail it back in, obviously, that's why it's called vote by mail. But you also have the option of filling it out and taking it to one of the early voting sites once early voting starts on October the 27th this year. Another thing that you can do with absentee ballots right now is the process that's called Vote Now. You can go into your supervisor of elections office, you can request an absentee ballot, receive it right there on the spot, and stay there and vote your ballot, seal it up, sign your name on the envelope. That's very important because it will not be counted if you don't sign it. And then turn it back in, and you will have voted right now. If you wait until October the 27th, when early voting starts, you can turn your absentee ballot in at the early voting site. And of course, you can always continue to mail it in any day through enough time that it will arrive at your supervisor of elections office no later than 7 p.m. on election day, November the 6th. If you don't mail it early enough to arrive by that time, it will not be counted.
Now let's say I am living or temporarily living overseas. I'm a U.S. citizen. How does my vote count?
Well, you would vote absentee ballot through whatever the country is that you're living in at the time. It would come back to the United States and would go back to your own supervisor of elections office.
Military officers are also, they have absentee ballot. They are legal to vote. Now, as we are in Central Florida, how many voting stations do we have in surrounding Orange County?
All right, it depends on whether you're talking about early voting or voting on Election Day, which is November the 6th. If we're talking about early voting, which goes from October the 27th, that's a Saturday, through Saturday, November the 3rd, every single day. Orange County has 10 early voting sites distributed around Orange County. No matter what precinct you are assigned to vote in on election day, you can go to any one of the 10 Orange County early voting sites and cast your ballot. On election day, however, you have only one place you can go, and that's to your local polling place.
Now, as we have two parties in the ballot board, we have the Democrats and the Republicans, but we also have other parties in there. People still can choose whoever they are, although these two main parties are on the ballot.
Yes, that's correct. At least in terms of the presidential election, there are a number of candidates from a number of different parties listed on the ballot, and the presidential office is listed first on the ballot. So you will see, because the current governor of the state of Florida is a Republican, you will see the Republican candidate listed first for every one of those offices that have a partisan nature. That is, that have one candidate from one party and one candidate from another. The party of the existing sitting governor is the party that's always listed first. So for example, if you were planning on voting for President Obama, you would see that he, as a Democrat, is listed second on the presidential section of the ballot. But you will also see a number of other candidates who are listed by their particular political party.
For the voter registration forms, I did an early voting. I had two forms, starting on page 2 and go on. One side English, one side Hispanics. How many pages are we supposed to have?
Well, this time the Orange County ballot is 3 pieces of paper, if you will, but they're printed on both sides, so it's the equivalent of having a 6-page ballot. Okay. And it's very important that you know that when you finish with the first page, you're not finished yet, you have more. So after all of the offices that have a political party associated with them, such as the presidential election, the election for state senator, the election for your local congressperson, you have another section on Supreme Court justices, whether or not they should be retained in office. And then you have a section on people who are running for their local water board. And then it goes into a very lengthy section on the constitutional amendments that Florida is considering. And there are 12 of those. They're numbered from 1 to 12, but you will notice that number 7 is not on the ballot. And that is because it was removed by the Supreme Court of Florida because of the wording of the ballot. They felt it was confusing. One thing you should be very aware of is that the wording of each of the amendments is very lengthy. They do it first in English and then in Spanish on every single potential amendment. And it's written in what we would call legalese. So if you can, there are a number of websites that you can go to online where you can obtain some, not advice necessarily, but some insight into what those different constitutional amendments would actually mean if you voted yes or if you voted no. Then following the constitutional amendments, there are, I believe, 4 or 5 charter amendments that are aimed at the charter for Orange County. And only when you've completed all of those have you completed the entire ballot.
To find out more of some of these rules and regulations also, I advise each and every one of you who have a computer, log into each city and county, the governor and the federal government, and request that weekly, monthly, and daily emails sent to you all information, not only about elections, but your rights also. And that's very important. So you can be informed if you're not reading the newspaper or looking at the news, but you can also see that through the email. Let's talk about how important women vote are into this election compared to every other election.
Well, for me to answer that question, I guess I've got to give a little bit of my own personal opinion. Are you certain that you want me to be...
That's what America is all about, free speech.
Well, as a woman, I guess I'm extremely concerned this particular time around. I'm old enough to have lived through a time when women's rights were a lot more restricted than they are today, and I'm very concerned that women's rights could be pushed back to perhaps the way they were even before I was a young girl. And I think who you choose to run this country makes a big difference in whether we go backwards or whether we go forward and make things more equal for women, whether it's equal pay for women, or whether it's the right to control our reproductive choices in life. I think that's an extremely important issue. And as far as women's reproductive choices are concerned, it's not just a reproductive issue, it's an economic issue. Because how and when we choose to have our families has a great bearing on whether we're going to be economically well off or fall behind economically. So I think that's a major choice that women have to make in this election. And I know who my choice is. I want to move forward with my choices. I don't want to move backwards.
My friends, today as we vote, we're not voting for you alone. You're voting for your children, your grandchildren, and your children's children coming. Because whatever happened in this election, you are setting the tone for the next election, and so on. Remember, it's so important that you get out and vote. Help your seniors, parents, your neighbors, your family, and your friends, those who can't get. Be a good Samaritan on this election year. Help them to get to their phone booth, the voters' booth, and let them vote so their voice could be heard. They are the strength of our today and yesterday, but you are the strength of our tomorrow. Now, early voting starts October 27th at the polling station, and the final voting day is November 6th. That's the day which makes the decision who is your community leader as a city, county, state, and federal. You choose so many politicians within this country within this time. So let's see who is going to be the great leader for 2013 onwards for the next 4 years. Let's talk a little bit about sample ballot, as we are a little bit ahead of so much parts that we have talked about. What is the sample ballot and how does it look, what to look out for who have not seen their ballot yet? Although I think a lot of people have already seen it.
The sample ballot is something that all voters, at least in Orange County, I have to admit, I don't know for sure if every county sends it out, although I would suspect that they do. But I know for certain that in Orange County, before an election, any election, whether it's a primary or a regular election, you receive in the mail a few weeks before the election a sample ballot. It is very important this time around especially that you look at that sample ballot, you open it up, you mark it up, because it's exactly the same as the one you will get in the voting booth. Now, why would you want to mark it up ahead of time? So that you have the time to do a little bit of research to make sure that what you're voting for and who you're voting for really does express your choices and your voice in this election. You are allowed to take that sample ballot that you've marked. You are allowed to take it into the voting booth with you and use it as a guide so that it doesn't take forever to actually mark your real ballot. I would encourage everyone with this lengthy ballot that we have this year to definitely do that. The other thing that comes along with your sample ballot is a listing of all of the places in Orange County that you can go to for early voting. It will list all 10 sites along with a map for how you would get to them. It will also then list your polling location, your correct polling location, for Election Day, November the 6th, if you choose to wait for that day to exercise your right to vote. Why is that important? Every 10 years in this country we have a census. And once the census is done, every state has an adjustment in the number of members of Congress based upon whether they've gained population or lost population. Prior to the 2010 census, Florida had 27 members of Congress. We gained population between 2000 and 2010. So when the census was taken in 2010, we found that we no longer have just 27 elected officials. We now have 29. Well, that means that the entire population of Florida is now had to be redistributed into 29 districts instead of 27. So as a result of all those changes in the district lines, some precinct numbers changed and some polling locations changed. If you did not vote in the primary election back in August, you may not be aware that there's been a change in your location to vote on November the 6th. And in your sample ballot will be the current information for you. It's extremely important that you check that out and you know for sure where to go on election day. That would be an awful thing to go and stand in line at a place you think is your voting place, only to find out it's the wrong one and it's now too late for you to go to the right place because the polls are almost ready to close.
Now, to find out your location, you should have a voter's registration card that you have got from DMV. Let's say time is running very short and you don't know where to go. You have a website that you can go to verify that.
Yes.
And that website is?
The Orange County website is OC for Orange County, the letter F for Florida, elections.com. So OCFelections.com. And may I say this about on election day? As long as you are in line by 7 p.m. on election day, no one can force you to leave until you've had a chance to cast your vote. If you leave the line for some reason, they have the right not to admit you back into the line. So make sure if you're still in line at 7 p.m. that you do not leave. Even if you have to call home, ask somebody to bring you some water or a snack, it's very important that you exercise your right to vote as a United States citizen.
My dear friends, as we only have 2 more weekends, consult with your pastor, your friends, and your church, whatever it is that you need advice from, and they can tell you and help you. I have gone to all the temples in the area here and asked for help, not only the Hindu temple but the Christian church also, to help their people, the seniors who need help and advice. So this way you are not being left out. Remember, November 6th is a Tuesday and not a Wednesday. We are blessed with the time in this country that you can go on this weekend or next weekend and vote early, that you don't have to lose time from your job and not getting paid. I know that dollar is very important. So get out. Get a ride on the weekend rather than wait until November 6th if you don't have a ride. So this way your fingerprint is there, your signature is there. Most important thing, for those of you who have the ballot come to your home, sign your name at the back of that envelope when you're ready to mail it, and you put 2 stamps. Make sure your name is signed just as it is on your driver's license. Otherwise, your vote may not be counted.
Correct.
So take every step and do not erase whatever you have already filled in for the vote, because it can cause problem. Should you do that and the voter ballot is spoiled, you can call the voter registration office. They'll send another one to you, or you can get out to the voter poll and vote.
Right, and as far as requesting an absentee ballot, what we call vote by mail, you can request an absentee ballot as late as October the 31st. But that doesn't give you very much time to then get it around to the Supervisor of Elections office. However, you always can drive to the Supervisor of Elections office if you're running short of time to mail it. And the address in Orange County is 191 West Cayley Avenue in Orlando, and that is halfway between I-4 and Orange Avenue.
My friends, I think we have shared with you some of the knowledge that's important for you to vote and to educate you on 2012 voter election. Is there anything else?
No, just good luck and happy voting.
Should you need any more information, we have over 100 volunteers in my office here that can answer your call. Most of you who know me know our number is Lotus Insurance at 407-889-8872. as the phones that are being used for the voter registration volunteer, they might not have a number for you to call back, but we will get one of the officers here to answer all your call anytime that you need and some question answers. Should you want to drop in the office, we are at 2591 West Orange Blossom Trail, Apopka, Florida 32712. You will see the big sign out there, voter registration or vote registration here. You will see a sign that says Lotus Insurance and Mortgage. That's where we at. You come in, there's somebody here 7 days a week from 8 a.m. till 10 p.m. every single night. And remember, if you want to call before you come, somebody might not answer the phone all the time, but if you come in here, there is always somebody in this office to answer any questions that you may want, any help you may want. It's here in this office if you don't know where to go, especially for the people in Apopka. You're just footsteps away. I thank you very much for listening, and please forward this message to as many of your friends, whether they are in Florida or they are out of state or out of county. It still will be useful for them to learn. Whoever they are, wherever they are, it's an educational program for each citizen of the United States. You have to be a citizen to vote. You have to be clear of any criminal activities.
Correct.
Right? So, if you are not a citizen, do not vote. It's a fine, it's a federal offense, and you don't want to be part of that. You want to be a law-abiding citizen. If you're not a citizen now, make sure that you get registered, become a citizen, so your voice can be heard for the next voters' election.